had the opportunity to raise capital, as that's sort of part of the job to go ahead and start things new, over about $100 million worth so far, and been able to really sort of build a large amount of enterprise value and hopefully impact people's lives in very positive ways. And what I'm really excited to talk to you about is, how do we take the ideas of, from that, leveraging logistics like Amazon and Uber with sort of evolving delivery vehicles such as like Zoom, with new labor realities such as we're all working from home, working remotely, right? How do we bring all those things together to sort of start building a new infrastructure for what does healthcare look like in the future, right? It's a world where health is delivered that's lighter, that's faster, that's more sustainable than ever before. And, to say the least, the last 2 years have maybe perhaps been a crash course in tomorrow. And on one side, it's been a crash course in tomorrow's challenges. We've had, over 150 million, plus people to whom have had challenges with COVID. We've unfortunately lost millions of people. We've had, millions more affected. We've seen mass disruptions in essential health, services, right? But beyond healthcare, right, almost every single global supply chain and every facet of our lives have actually been impacted. And this impact has definitely been unevenly distributed, right? Where it's affecting those with far less, far more than otherwise. And we've seen this with, every different thing from GDPs going down, right? And we've seen challenges in perhaps the most simple things, right? That human connection, that human conversation, right? And if we sort of take away from this, right, we've seen that yesterday's infrastructure needs to be evolved to go ahead and meet tomorrow's challenges, right? But at the same time, we've actually seen hope. We've seen, what can be done, right? That, there are millions of people with millions of stories of sort of humanity's, indomitability, in terms of spirit and the ingenuity. We've seen, Zoom go from science fiction to every day, where I've seen and interacted with more friends and family than I ever had before, right? We've, been able to build, design, develop, deliver a vaccine faster than we ever had possible, right? We've seen sort of the best of humanity, and it's, well, frankly, inspiring, right? And what we don't realize in some senses is that today is amazing, right? Just look at what we're doing now. We're literally having a conversation with people around the world in real time, right? Not hundreds and thousands, right? And that's what's so exciting about today, right? And we've seen the aspect of going from, literally building new worlds and experiences. We've started to go from prosthetics to bionics. We've started to decode human health, right? And where that's going and what's going on, right? We've started to see the start of the true space age, where, we actually will see people on Mars in our lifetimes, right? And just in short, that's amazing, right? But it's pretty clear that the global health system, in terms of its current infrastructure, has a challenge of scale, right? Most of us are involved in healthcare, either as a provider or to those that steer nations, right? We see that almost at every level, today's global health infrastructure is challenged, right? We need to go beyond some simple financial models that we are today to financial models that align not over the course of 1 year, but over the course of years and decades, right? We need to go beyond systems of record to actually systems of care. And the question we got to ask is sort of what is our rate limiting step? What's stopping us from that scale that we all know we need and are looking for? Is it the number of physicians? Is it us as patients and how we behave? Is it the medications? Is it the diagnostics? Is it imaging? Is it funding? Is it the new algorithm? What is that rate limiting step? And really looking back over, as over the last like almost 40 years, I grew up in a family of physicians. Grew up in family, where I went to hospitals and clinics every day. I've been involved in healthcare on a variety of facets. And when you really start peeling back the onion, it's, where, it's, from building modern AI health systems to operating health plans to operating pharmacy benefit management companies to rethinking them to helping people find what's the right health plan. When you really peel back the onion, it's really just actually something very simple. It's the conversations that matter, right? Why is it that when we can go ahead and have a conversation with almost anyone in the world in 2 seconds flat, that we are challenged with having the conversations with the right people in the right time, right? What is that global care conversation supply chain, right? That's sort of that rate limiting step, right? And, and today, we healthcare has evolved in a very organic fashion, right? And, it's involved in constraints that were true then, but are no longer true now, right? It's very schedule based, it's very geo-fenced. There are, provider networks that happen to be there, right, in the way they work. And fundamentally what we're having is a big supply demand mismatch, right? And, like in the US, for example, it's 24 days, in others, it's even more. And this challenge is, becoming worse, right? We are highly connected. We're becoming very data rich, right? But, the question is, we're still very care poor. I would almost posit we're having the next generation of the PC revolution, right? So instead of, personal computers, I would, say that our smartphones are almost becoming personal clinics, right? And so when we think about that data richness is truly there, but how is it we're solving the care poor challenge that we are today, right? But if we start thinking about it not as an issue of people and medications and diagnostics, but fundamentally about logistics, right? When we start thinking about how do we rethink how it is we make use of our resources and make them available and connect them to the people that need them. If we think about Uberizing those provider networks, right, connected with AI, to really drive those operations, can we actually start to get to the scale that we're really looking for? And so I like for all of us to sort of imagine a tomorrow that's actually possible today, right? I like for us to think about deviceless screening. Like we all have a phone, we all have a camera. Imagine the types of things that we can do with it, just through the audio and video analysis. And with AI, we can start determining things like pulse rate, rest rate, and a variety of other signs and symptoms and vitals, right? And that's extraordinary. And that's where that evolution of how we're getting to that personal clinic, aka our smartphone that's with us all the time, so that we ourselves are truly the point of care, right? Think of that combined with AI that's able to have a conversation with us, connecting the episodic data that will be there with the real-time data with an actual conversation to really identify how acute is the situation, what could be going on, what type of physician or services are needed, right? And now bringing that together with an extraordinary network of Uberized physicians and specialists and care providers around the world so that we can connect people to the right people in the right period of time, right? So who's needed, how soon, and why, right? And then when you bring all that together with extraordinary capabilities like Zoom and sort of when you think about the Zoom era that we are now, right? Going from the web to the mobile to the Zoom era and combining that with data and AI, right? In that moment, so we can dramatically change that conversation, right? And enrich that and make that better. And then going from that to what happens afterwards, where we think about how do we orchestrate the services around, right? How do we enable continuum of data through continuum of care? And how do we really enable not only this concept of a visit, but what's a micro visit or a data visit, right? Really sort of evolving ourselves into what's possible by looking at what's capable, right? And really think about now connecting that with a network of specialists elevated with these capabilities, right? That's a potential very exciting tomorrow, right? And with that, I'd like you to think about that's what we're building over at Healiom is that actual infrastructure, right? Where we can enable care by specialists, right? So that you can actually get the care that you need within moments of when you need it and how you need it, and really do the pre, during, and post logistics, right? And so we're building that new logistics health stack, right, to deliver health, right? Where we're taking ideas that showed that they scaled, right? If we go from how did computers build the internet that we have today, and how do companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon are able to provide services that deal with billions of people every day? They move from operating things in a serial process to a parallel process, right? Where there's this concept in there for all the techies, it's called map reduce, but for all of us, it simply means, divide and conquer. And it's really a way in which we can marshal the resources that we have, right? And bringing the people and AI and sources together in a way that things don't just have an incremental impact, but fundamentally have an exponential impact. Right. And so really at Healiom, it's really sort of three major components if you think about it. The first is how do we triage, search, match, rank, and route, right? How do we therefore connect, identify what someone needs and connect them to that right resource? And then two, how do we make that interaction, that conversation, the conversations that matter? So we remove every barrier we possibly can to those conversations and make those conversations amazing, right? And then after that, how do we make sure that the things that need to happen, right? And that we understand the financial realities and make it work for everyone involved, right? And that's really made possible by AI. We've built that over the last many years. It's been used now over 20,000 times. It's been proven to be accurate. It's been based on large amounts of data. It's connecting that with that virtual care network, right? So really figuring these things out so we can deliver that new logistics model so that we can sort of unlock the potential, right? And so, the first part, it's really how do we have that conversation supported by AI to identify what's going on? How do we help surface who may be available in the exact moment, right? And this is where, when we think about things globally, it may be midnight here, it's midday someplace else, and the opposite is also true. And then how do we bring all those potential options available to that individual so they can identify who they would love to have that conversation with? And then when they're having that conversation, how do we make that amazing, right? How do we enhance that? How do we surface those signs, those symptoms, those vitals, right? How do we start doing, simplifying not only the side from the patient side, but also, as I grew up in a family of physicians, physicians are people too. How do we make their lives simple so that we can go ahead and accelerate all parties, right? That's going on. And then finally, there's also the aspect of, okay, what happens afterwards, right? How do we activate the labs? How do we activate things? I mean, we have extraordinary things today where we're having drones fly, blood to people as they need it, right? Today is a very exciting opportunity. It's not about necessarily always creating the brand new medication or, with amazing impacts, but it's also about how do we connect all these things together so we can get that exponential impact. And that's also go ahead and, make sure that it all financially works for all parties around, right? And so really it's about delivering that new workflow, which, unlocks the potential of every provider, right? Because really what we're trying to get to is where we make scheduling obsolete, because actually every hour, minute, and second matters. So how do we match people to the right care and resource? How do we help deliver that care? How do we actually have a second provider and AI review that situation so we're ensuring quality? And then how do we simplify, the payments model, the reality across the board, right? And really, so that's really what we're trying to get to, is how do we power that global care conversation supply, right? How do we get to a place that is schedule free, through Uberized provider networks? How do we ensure high quality through, an AI and 2 doctors for every visit or encounter, right? How do we change the way we're speaking to each other, right? Where we're thinking about that tagged messaging, that feed that allows us, right? It's taking the things that we've learned across a variety of different industries and bringing them together in a harmonized way, right? So it's really where it's not just, hey, can we connect to people, but it's before that, how do we determine who's the right people and the right resources to bring, making those conversations amazing, and then following up and making sure everyone's also informed of what's going on, right? And so really, at a baseline, we look at ourselves and what we're hoping to do with extraordinary partners like Zoom, and other folks across the board is build that modern care logistics platform so we can deliver that instant unified care that we're all looking for. So we're not, waiting to have the conversations that matter for weeks or months, right? But we're happy to have them within minutes. We're not constrained by just the people around us, but really can tap into the available capacity that is there nationwide or globally, right? Where we've gone from having to try to hard code everything where the data speaks to us and drives the protocols, through AI, right? Where we dramatically change the way in which those operations work, right? Where we go from not just dealing with minor acute things remotely, but actually dealing with a meaningful depth of care for different levels of acuity, because we're bringing the data, we're bringing the capabilities, we're bringing the people together to help that patient in the moment, where we go from serial operations to matrixed or in parallel or distributed, operations. And so where we not only limit the activation of resources, but really being able to drive that entire ecosystem, right? So it's really a platform of how do we unlock the potential that is there, that has been built, that is extraordinary, within people, within services, et cetera. And this is sort of, that platform to do that. Right. And so, in a lot of ways, we think about what we're doing, as, do you remember what it was like before Google or Amazon or iPhone and or Zoom, right? And in some senses, I don't. I suppose once upon a time, I can reminisce back once upon a time, but, that's not the way I think about every day, and our hope is, by making health, access equitable, amazing, super fast, you won't remember what it was like before Healiom. And, our hope is, to work with the extraordinary people that are here today, right? If you're a provider, we would love to work with you. If you're, at a health ministry, we love to work with you, right? That, if you're a health system, so on and so forth. It is by connecting all of us together in ways that are meaningful that we can start unlocking this potential. And so, Glow and Healiom, and thank you. I'd love to open up to conversations and questions.
Well, Ash, I'm hearing words in the room here with me like unbelievable, fantastic. I hadn't heard this before. So that ought to make you and Carla feel a little bit good.
Well, it is a pleasure. We just spent a lot of time really thinking about how it is we can build something that drives value and build something that's available today, right? And that's, taking the outcomes of work that I spent the last decade on, that's taking, the work that people have built today with extraordinary companies like Zoom and otherwise. And this is really an opportunity where 1 + 1 gets us 10, if not more, right? And so it's an ecosystem, but excited to be part of it.
Carla, will you have other insights for us?
Ash, we are actually doing our pilots this quarter, and then we're moving into generally available product. And our focus here is in the United States right now, but maybe talk a little bit about our interest with international opportunities.
Of course.
Let me also thank Dr. Sean House for his presentation in the previous hour. Your medical director. Go ahead, Ash.
Yeah. Towards that, we believe, care is needed the world around, right? And, medicine, and its application is something that is universal, or at least Terra bound so far, but hopefully past that. And so we're super excited to work with folks that are outside the US, where we can enable access to a set of US-based physicians to around the world, but obviously, hopefully, as we grow, make physicians from every part of the world available everywhere else, right? That's really our hope in some senses, right? Is to really unlock that capacity that just due to geographic realities or otherwise constrained, but in today's world, that need not be so. And so, if you are, wherever you are in Europe, in Africa, and otherwise, love to talk with you. So let's just say short. I did see one question regarding sort of credentialing across states. This is sort of a very US based question, but happy to take it, and this is where we spend a lot of time with lawyers, which I'm sure is the most exciting time that we spend. But this is really where we take a page out of sort of the teleradiology model, where we've been able to look at how it is we enable someone to have that right conversation, but then make sure someone that's in state, in the right network, is able to review and sign off. This is sort of taking advantage of the fact that we have a video, we can do a recording so that QA provider can actually see that patient. We have all the notes, the rest, and if that QA provider needs to or wants to, they can also have a conversation with the patient. And that really is how we start unlocking the value. And that happens to be true, if we go on, on the opposite or global, right? as almost every country and every, province, many of these same types of regulatory realities happen to apply. And I think it just makes sense that it allows us, this extraordinary opportunity to actually do something, what perhaps was never done in healthcare before, which was QA at the time of care, right? And that's sort of an exciting thing, because that can really only simply elevate the quality that can be delivered, while as an unintended side effect actually provides us the unlocking of capacity. Carl, any other questions or points to raise?
I'm also thinking a little bit also about the diagnostic technologies and capabilities. In Heidi's presentation yesterday and also today, she mentioned that Zoom is already working with medical device manufacturers, but maybe talk about both types of diagnostic tracks that we're thinking about.
Well, I mean, the more data that we can make available at the true point of care, the individual, obviously the better, right? And so, beyond the work that we're doing with video and audio, right, I truly believe if you look at how the phone, and you can consider the watch as a companion, is evolving, we're almost seeing the set of things that one has in a clinic available to you all the time, right? And I think that's only going to expand, right? And as and when people will need, we'll see new and interesting devices come about, and connecting them with Zoom as well as just otherwise, and what we're building is an exciting opportunity.
Well, guys, thank you so much. Carla, you another comment?
Yes, there's another question. Do you have a feel for how this would impact provider engagement and job satisfaction?
By the way, that's coming from a hospital administrator.
Yes.
Well, my hope is that they feel dramatically less burdened. I think, we've unfortunately had the request for physicians to do, 5 times as much in half the time. And, that's a simply unrealistic expectation, where we're not removing the barriers from them from doing the things that matter. Our hope is with this type of platform, the pre, the during, the post, we alleviate many of the burdensome tasks, or accelerate or simplify the tasks to be done, right, where we deliver the content, right? Current electronic health records for many times are sort of death by checkbox. And a reason for that is because there is no context to the actual situation, the visit, the encounter, whatever you want to say in mind, right? But if you take that, audio and convert that to text, you take the previous signals and previous conditions, you kind of, through AI and stuff that we've built, you kind of know what the most likely conditions a physician is going to want to potentially choose. And if you know that, the types of medications, the potential labs, the potential procedures. And these are all ways in which you can dramatically simplify the process of documentation, for example, which is one of the most onerous burdens right now physicians face, right? But also towards the point of supporting greater accuracy in what that documentation is as well, right? So this, you have a lot of benefits downstream. So really our hope is we think of a provider as one of our key stakeholders, and we want to make that experience amazing. We want, just like for the patient, for it to be click to care. We want the same type of experience for the provider, where it's click to care, right? And really, for them, hopefully, and the sort of idea of Healiom is have that lighter than air experience.
And then Ash, also the aspect of curbside consult for the physicians, right?
Yeah.
Specialists.
So one of the most exciting things as we were building Healiom, and as we build out the specialty network and making that available to everybody, was the actual interest for physicians to be able to have that access themselves, right? There are many times, where, you're an ER doc, and you love access to a nephrologist or a cardiologist, right? or you're a primary care physician and you would just like in that moment, a conversation when you're having with that patient right then and there with the rheumatologist, right? And this is sort of that ability to create that on-demand conversation, right, with that right type of person to support, not only the patient, but also providers, be it a nurse practitioner, be it a primary care physician, be it another specialist, right? That's the way in which we can tap the extraordinary resource that is, physicians and around the world to help, to help deliver the best care possible.
Well, Ash and Carla and Sean and Healiom, we thank you personally. We thank you, your company and its sponsorship of this program. And Carla, specifically, you brought us to so many other friends that have joined us for this program, other sponsors and others. You guys are great. Another comment I heard as I need to close this session as we get ready for our noon 3 tracks that will resume here in a couple minutes is that, hey, if this thing works, it's going to change healthcare forever. I think that's what your vision is. So
Well,
Absolutely.
people are starting to get it.
well, that's what we hope. And to say the least, we can't do it alone. So we definitely are looking forward to connecting with all of you. It really is together that we will make the change, and super excited to have the opportunity to do so. So thank you.
And as you heard, over a couple thousand registrants from 120 countries will be getting this message. So thanks again. And bye, and we'll see you guys in a couple minutes on the other lines. Appreciate it.
Yeah, ciao.
Thank you.